Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's bright and early, daily discipline, mind, body, and soul. This is how we get through Saturday morning. I'll be coaching and mentoring all day. If you want to get on my schedule, just go to my website, skyazrael.com. I'll put you on. Let's talk about how to analyze our anger. This is probably not going to be a very popular topic for many of you. Many of you love your anger. You dwell in anger. You feel like your anger is your power. Some of you want to figure this out. I've had anger issues for a long time. I've let my anger destroy my life in many ways, and I've had to figure out how to get on top of it. So there's a little process that I've learned, that I was taught. I'll turn you guys on to it. Now, not all anger is bad, and some anger is good. It's not like you have a mission of purging yourself of anger to become some emotionless robot, Ned Flanders, who's happy all the time, you know, howdily doodly, neighbor. That's not healthy. But not all your anger is healthy. There's a good chance that a lot of your anger is leftover weakness and negativity from your past. That you have a wounded bird inside of you. Anger is typically fear. And that's hard for some people to understand. But we're analyzing anger. What is anger? Why am I angry? You have to start asking yourself these questions. So when we analyze our anger, the point is to find out what negative emotions are still inside of us. What negative, repetitive emotions arise during anger. And when those emotions arise, instead of beating them down or beating yourself up about it, you want to acknowledge and address them. To be aware of them. To put the light on them. So, you might be really angry, and if you're able to have some sort of consciousness, if you're able to just step back for a moment, just for a second, in the moment of anger, it doesn't mean you're not still angry. You can get back to dwelling on how much you hate somebody or what you're mad about in a second, but in the moment of anger, if you can stop for a second to self-analyze and to ask yourself a couple questions. Why am I so angry? That's a good one to start with. Where's this anger coming from? Now, at first, our response may be a projection. You may feel attacked. But you can learn to do this pretty quickly, and you may be able to dive into that. So you feel attacked. And you're thinking, you know, screw that motherfucker. And you're mad. But why did they make you so angry? Does someone have the power over you to just make you angry, turn you on and off like a light switch? Here, watch, I can make Sky angry, bam. I can make him unangry. I can sit here and control that motherfucker. Do people control you? So ask yourself, why are you angry? And whatever comes up, just acknowledge it. So you may have to peel back the layers of that onion as the negative emotions arise. To really get down to the thought behind the thought, the sponsoring thought, what's really going on. As a friend of mine, Shonda, used to say, she always used to say that, that was her catchphrase, what's really going on. Wherever she is on the world right now, if she's still alive, I'm sure she's somewhere saying that. You got to find out what's really going on. When you can find out what's really going on, you want to formulate a positive affirmation to counteract that repetitive negative thought pattern. And that repetitive negative thought pattern is going to be hidden inside the wounds that are deep in you. These old wounds. And that's where your anger lies, is you're protecting these old wounds. So, here's an example of how this works for me. I get mad. I get mad all the time. So imagine that I'm mad. I'm real mad. Something happened. and I'm pissed off. Well, when I start asking myself, why are you mad? What often comes up is a repetitive statement. And I've heard myself say this to myself in my head. I've heard myself say this thousands of times over most of my entire life. You see, it's interesting about anger, how anger is typically one location inside of your brain. When you get mad, you go to a location inside of your brain. And you always go to that same location. When you're happy, it's different. Happiness can be found in many different locations in the brain, and there's many different types of happiness. There's only one type of anger. We're not talking about the intensity. You may say, yeah, I get really angry sometimes, and sometimes I don't get very angry. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. Stop trying to jump ahead. We're not talking about intensity. I'm talking about different kinds, different flavors, different smells. There's different kinds of happiness. We can make a whole video and talk for 20 minutes about the different types of happiness, but there's only one kind of anger. So I get mad. I'm fucking mad as hell. If I can stop for a second in the moment of anger, while I'm angry, and ask myself, what's going on with you? Why are you so mad? What comes up for me is this repetitive statement of, I'm not the guy to fuck with. And isn't that interesting? When I step back from that, I realize, well, where does that come from? Why do you think that you have to prove yourself? What's that about? And sure, you could stop there and just say a positive affirmation to counteract that anger, that weakness, to tell yourself, I have nothing to prove. So we've gone from being angry to realizing that maybe I feel like I have something to prove, and you can counteract that childlike need, because it's kind of immature to feel like you have to prove yourself. A very confident, strong man doesn't prove himself to people. I don't have to prove myself to anyone. I don't have to prove how tough I am. I don't have to prove how strong I am to anyone. I don't have to prove anything to anyone, just myself. So I can tell myself I have nothing to prove. But you could also go into it even further. You can ask yourself, well, why do you feel like you have something to prove? You can do this conversation rapidly. I can have this whole conversation in my head within seconds while I'm angry. So I can ask myself, if I want to take this further and unpeel that onion, get down to the root, the sponsoring thought, the thought behind the thought, what's really there, what's the seed of this anger? Why do you feel like you have to prove yourself? What's that about? And what may come up is that because if I don't prove myself to others and prove my strength to others, I'm afraid that they'll hurt me. So, whoa, there you go. You just got into a session with Jordan Peterson. You just got into some serious Freudian psychology right there. Carl Jung or any of these people would have a field day with that. But you don't need them. You can sit there and figure this out within seconds, in the moment of anger. And analyze your anger like this. So then when you've settled on the fact that maybe I feel unsafe, you realize this anger is coming from a place of fear, that my need to prove myself and how tough I am to show motherfuckers who's the boss. That's actually, if you unpeel that onion, it's coming from a place of fear. Isn't that interesting? And if you don't address that fear, it'll always arise. It'll stay in you. That weakness will stay there. You can maybe tell yourself a positive affirmation to counteract that negative thought that's buried inside of you. Tell yourself, I am safe. So you got angry. Oh, I'm mad as fuck. And I analyzed myself. Why am I angry? And maybe I settled on the fact that I'm not feeling safe in this moment. I'm feeling attacked. That wounded bird has come out. It feels like it needs to protect itself once again. So I can counteract that and tell myself maybe 3 times just in my head, I am safe. I am safe. I'm safe. And you may notice an electrochemical neurological shift inside your brain. You may switch in that moment from the fight or flight response, from your amygdala into another quadrant of your brain, to a more rational, peaceful, more in control part of your brain. So it's just a little trick that I've learned. If you have anger issues, you need to get on top of it. I've watched a lot of people die because of anger. I watched a lot of motherfuckers get murdered because of anger. I know a lot of friends kill themselves because of anger. I know a lot of friends get lost to addiction because of anger. Anger will destroy you if you don't get on top of it. Food for thought.